Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a virtual roundtable on how Trump's failed pandemic response has hurt Maine's small businesses and upended our tourism economy. My name is Kathleen Marra, and I'm chair of the Maine Democratic Party. Joining us today for this roundtable is State Senator Dave Miramant, Wade Kavanaugh, owner of the Gem Theater in Bethel. Thank you so much for being with us today. When Donald Trump ran for president in 2016, he made a lot of promises about how he would make America's economy great again. He made the point constantly that his experience in business made him the right choice to lead America's economy. But as we approach the end of Trump's first term, with small businesses in crisis in Maine and across the country, it's clear that Trump was not the right person for the job. Trump failed our economy in a number of ways. First, there was his failed trade war with China. Using his signature ham-handedness and bluster, Trump's unnecessarily escalated trade tensions by slapping tariffs on Chinese goods, and China retaliated with tariffs on a number of American exports, including a number of vital Maine goods. The result was American exports to China cratered, which has been devastating for the Maine lobster industry, as well as the wild blueberry and other agricultural industries. Then, of course, there was his catastrophic handling of COVID-19. From the beginning, Trump knew this virus was going to be deadly. He knew it would require a major response. He knew and he did nothing, letting COVID-19 hit the country at full speed. The lack of a national response to the virus had an immediate and long-lasting impact. There have now been millions of cases around the country, and more than 200,000 Americans have died. There's also been serious economic devastation. Most small businesses were forced to close for some period of time during the outbreak, and many will not be able to reopen. In fact, by early May, more than 110,000 small businesses around the country have closed, with nearly 1 in 20 remaining small businesses expected to close for good in the coming 6 months. Maine's usually vibrant small business community has not been spared. In large part due to the drop-off in tourism, in normal years, Maine brings in 37 million visitors who spend upwards of $6 billion. The tourism industry, dominated by small businesses, usually employs 70,000 Mainers. This year, as the pandemic surged and visitors became scarce, that number dropped to just 29,000. While it's rebounded somewhat over the summer, nearly a third of our tourism jobs still have not come back. While Trump has done very little to help small businesses, the programs his administration has targeted to small businesses have been a boon for big corporations. Trump's 2017 tax bill included a pass-through deduction, which he billed as a victory for small businesses, but less than 30% of small business owners said that that tax bill actually helped their business, and evidence shows that the bill did not make it easier for small businesses to hire more, give bonuses or raises, or pay off loans. But big corporations have profited immensely from the bill overall, and more than half of the benefits from the measure that was supposed to be a win for small businesses went to the top 1% of earners. Similarly, the Paycheck Protection Program ended up doling out hundreds of millions of dollars to big corporations, while many small businesses and minority-owned small businesses received no relief whatsoever. Overall, the evidence is clear. Between Trump's failed trade war, his COVID-19 response, and his focus on boosting the profits of big corporations while leaving the rest of the economy behind, his presidency has been calamitous for Maine small business. Today, we're joined by guests who can give us a perspective on how Trump's failings have affected small business owners here in Maine. In a moment, we'll hear from State Senator Dave Miramant, who is not only a state senator from Camden, but is himself a small business owner in Camden. But first, I'd like to welcome Wade Kavanaugh, owner of the Gem Theater in Bethel, Maine, who can tell us how Trump's failures have affected his business.
Hey there, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Great. My name is Wade Kavanaugh. My son was napping and just woke up about an hour early ahead of schedule. So I guess that my comments will probably be interrupted at some point. But Yeah, my name is Wade Kavanaugh. I'm an artist and a small business owner, and I live in Bethel, Maine with my wife, Beth Weisberger, and our 3 kids. Between my wife and I, we also have 3 businesses. So I feel like I just want to mention all 3. Best business is called Nice Spice. It's nice as in GNEISS, like the metamorphic bedrock of Maine. It's a jar and a spice company, and her really unique product is kind of geared towards zero waste consumers and people who have these like design conscious kitchens. Mostly people who like live in small apartments in urban spaces. So she ships her product worldwide from Albany Township, Maine, which is just outside of Bethel. Second, I mentioned I'm an artist. I've collaborated with Stephen B. Wynn, who has recently moved from New York to Portland. We've worked together for the past 15 years, creating these immersive installation artworks. Most recently, we were awarded our first big public art project, which is a $1 million commission at the Washington State Convention Center in Seattle, Washington. Then lastly, Beth and I co-run the Gems Theater in downtown Bethel. The Gems, an independent movie theater and a community gathering space, which as you can imagine has been deeply impacted by the pandemic. We're also home to one of the few co-work spaces in Western Maine. So for us, it's important to talk specifically about each one of our businesses and how they've been impacted by Trump's mishandling of the pandemic and the economy. We don't want to generalize. We don't want to be hyperbolic. We don't really want to contribute to that larger culture of misinformation that's driving a divide between our town, our state, and our country. First and foremost, Nice Spice has seen the cost of its inputs rise 20 to 30% over the past year. Beth has worked hard, for the past 10 years that she's owned this business to have as much of her product made, as possible in America. But it's just the honest reality is that it's not entirely possible to do that. The biggest component of her product are glass jars. And at the scale of her business, we can't find a supplier to manufacture glass jars in the United States now. We hope that reshoring manufacturing is possible, but we don't believe that Trump's overnight jacking up of tariffs is going to result in the immediate reshoring of those facilities. And so that has directly impacted small business owners who rely on China for the raw inputs of their products. That tariff is not only punitive to Chinese manufacturers, it's punitive to small business owners, some of whom are right here in Maine. Hi, sorry, I'm getting a little interruption here. Okay. Second, my art practice has been significantly impacted by Trump's slow response to the pandemic. My collaborator, Steve, and I have spent the last year developing a project for the Washington State Convention Center, and just learned last week that our project is going to be canceled. Not postponed, canceled. It hurts, but ultimately it makes sense. The site where the artwork was supposed to exist was a convention center, a place where large numbers of people are gathered together. And with so much in its uncertainty about the financial projections of the convention center, they're seeing spiraling costs, for the construction, and they had to make cuts, and unfortunately, that meant us. So it was a huge breakthrough for our career, and it would have had a pretty significant economic impact in our own lives and the businesses in Maine where we would have sourced all of our materials. Lastly, my wife and I co-run the Gem Theater. It's a small independent theater in Bethel, and our doors have been closed to the public since March 15th. It's as soon as we close the door, like the school's also closed, and so it essentially, our lobby turned into the one-room schoolhouse for our kids. And it's been just an absolutely wild past 6 months. Bracketing the 6 months of lost revenue, I would say that the most frustrating part of being closed has been, the wild, wild west atmosphere that Trump has fostered with his campaign of misinformation. It's in our town, it's become a political act to wear a mask. It's become a political act to say that you believe in science. And so now that we're trying to slowly reopen, we're spending an inordinate amount of time just defending our beliefs in science and community health, which is absurd to us. Bethel is it's a winter town, and it's our busiest season. So we're able to do a few outdoor events now, but it's really, really hard to imagine that the next 6 months is going to be any easier than the previous 6 months. But I guess ultimately that will come down to us and what decisions we make in November. Thanks very much for having us. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for sharing your story, Wade. Now I'd like to hand it over to State Senator Dave Miramant. Senator Miramant represents coastal Knox County, and he's serving his 4th term in the state Senate. Among his many other accomplishments in the Senate, Senator Miramant owns and operates a Spirit Soaring glider rides in Owl's Head. Please join me in welcoming Senator Dave Miramant.
Thanks, Kathleen. And I'm assuming you can see and hear me now. That's good. So let me know. The pandemic really undermined our businesses here in Knox County, and we waited for quite a while for some leadership. And that's been one of the biggest missing pieces. There's a lot of ways that people run their business and can survive in tough situations. Got through 2008, but this one was absent any leadership from the top, which left everyone guessing on how to proceed. And without that leadership, without some guidelines, it also left them nervous about what would be the consequences of a failed action. So that just highlighted how important it was to elect real leaders and not people that are there to use an institution for their own gain and profit, and then to see how many systems they can undermine. So we had not just watching that for several years, but then the pressure of an event where lack of leadership has hurt probably twice as many people as it would have had to, in ways of losing businesses or ways of staying in fear because they couldn't understand what was going on. They didn't know what to do to keep themselves and their friends, family, and community safe. And nothing was really coming out. Fortunately, here in Maine, we did have some from Governor Mills, but even her steps could have been better coordinated to help everyone if there was a nationwide coordinated effort. And we had, without that effort from the top, we had governors doing their own thing, making some states even more of a wild west of, we're going to deny everything that's going on. It's a hoax. I mean, we've had the range in the spectrum. My business, I would say, calls are 70% down. And that would be initially at the opening of the season, June 1st, was 100%. I didn't know if I was going to do anything until about July. And then I got a few calls. This comes back again to there being no ideas for people giving rides, whether it was in boats or planes or other tourist industries, that you didn't know how to have those people come. You're going to be in proximity. Is it masks? For 2 months, we had no information on masks except don't wear them because they wanted them in the hands of healthcare providers. That gave an assumption that there was no good to be had from masks because we didn't get it. We had a president who said he wouldn't wear them no matter what information was given. All these mixed messages, the worst time for that. In the airline, we trained, we learned how to use the skills of our crew. We worked together, and then if we had an emergency, we already knew who to look towards for a particular aspect of that emergency, but we needed all input. We needed everyone working together. That has to be the metaphor for the biggest institution in this country, the presidency. And we have to be taking responsibility for electing people who will lead in a time of crisis and lead in a time of peaceful existence. So that's been missing. I'm out in the community every day and have been since the beginning, trying to help people get food or get necessities. Those folks that are more vulnerable who don't want to go out until we know how to deal with it. And what's happened is the community has been so slow to open because of it. It wasn't necessary. We could have pulled this together. And now we're having that same situation where the businesses started to open and they're doing an amazing job. All the ones that I go to are making sure there's distancing, making sure that the appropriate face covering is worn in the right area. You're outside, different standards. All of this is coming together, but unfortunately, we had that bubble, as we usually do, when everybody realizes it's August and they haven't taken a vacation, and all of the states that we allowed to piled in, and we had this great bunch of tourism pick up, and everybody thought, oh, I might be able to save things from this. And then, of course, September's coming. We're not getting the leaf peepers and the folks without kids. They're still hanging back, or they live in states where it's not allowed for them to come without quarantining. Testing has not been stepped up like the federal government could have provided leadership for. I mean, there are so many ways, and I won't take it away that when we have something new that nobody's experienced, there will be growing pains. But the growing pain from the top is not to hide your head in the sand, have information that you don't share, and then do the wrong thing. And where we thought there might have been mistakes made because there wasn't enough information, we now learn a couple weeks ago that the president had the information and chose to not tell us, and then to act like he didn't know it while he's hiding protective equipment. I mean, it's just an amazing ball drop by that administration. And we need to step up, coming up soon, to make sure we transition that to a working democracy again, one that puts people in charge who can lead. And that will help us here in Maine with our small businesses, because most of Maine businesses are small businesses. And the idea that this economic plan had helped the country, it helped big business. There's no question about it. They're happy. They're still using our utility laws against us. They're still out there taking the money from Mainers and taking it away. And here, all our Maine businesses are suffering because they couldn't get some of that money. They couldn't get the tourists here. The lobster industry and fishing, the president dropped in for a minute and said, oh, I'm going to open up this fishing area. Nobody fishes there. They're dealing with tariffs that are forcing them to sell the lobster from Maine to Canada because they weren't subject to tariffs. So we're selling at a loss. I mean, every direction, this administration has been a failure to Maine small business. And we are going to dig ourselves out, and we're working together to do that, but that's enough.
Thank you, Senator Miramant, for sharing your experience. Our speakers today have made it clear. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our state, and under Donald Trump's leadership, they've struggled. Until recently, I myself was a small business owner, and I think it's clear to most people that most small businesses have no cushion. So a week out of work can be devastated for both the business owner and all the employees. The woman who bought my business recently told me that she was able to get through, it was a hair salon, she was able to get through this latest pandemic situation, but were it to hit again, as we said earlier, she would have to close. So I think that's why all of this is so important, that we send Joe Biden to the White House. Once we beat this pandemic, we can't just go back to the way things were. We have to build back better. And Joe has a plan to give small businesses in Maine and across the country the support they need to thrive. His plan calls for establishing a true small business fund, which would set aside $60 billion for small lenders and community financial institutions, which are the most effective way to get financial resources to small businesses. He also will ensure that the benefits of all programs set up for small businesses actually go to small businesses rather than to big corporations who don't need the help. With so many livelihoods hanging in the balance, we must do everything we can to make sure Joe Biden wins in November. If you'd like to join the fight to defeat Trump, go to maindems.org/volunteer. And if you haven't already made your plan to vote, visit voteinmaine.com for more information on how to register and all the different ways you can cast your ballot this election. That brings us to the end of our roundtable. I'd like to thank Wade and Senator Miramant for joining us, as well as everyone who tuned in on our Facebook page. There are only 41 days till Election Day, so let's get to work.